So my first guest is Mr. Will Pye, and in our interview, I just got to see how much of an amazing man he is doing what he loves and hope to help as many people as possible. And that's just a wonderful dream he has. And it was my first interview, guys. So be gentle and I hope you enjoy it. Yeah, that's it. Talk to you after. Welcome to What Are You Even Talking About? The podcast where we delve into many topics so I can provide you with knowledge on a little bit of everything so you can have a broader perspective, questioning reality, interviewing people of all backgrounds in order to come up with answers to life's tough questions, and talking about anything I find interesting in this reality. I'm your host, M. Lyons, the Nomothete. Okay, so today this is my first interview, so I'm very excited to be doing this, and it has been a dream of mine to be able to do things like this. So our guest today is Will Pye, and he is a gratitude coach who specifies helping others alchemize their pain and trauma into radical gratitude. And that's a wonderful story to have, to be able to do for people. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me on. It's a real pleasure and an honor to be your first guest. Thank you.
Yeah,
Very auspicious.
I think it'll be great. So tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Well, my background is in face-to-face fundraising. So I've spent a career getting money for charities, essentially. But what my deeper purpose and passion is facilitating transformation. So I work with individuals and groups, either as a coach or speaker or in workshops and retreats, and facilitate transformation. Ultimately, the end of suffering, and how to live in meditative awareness and enjoy life.
That's great. That's wonderful that you can do that for people. Starting in the life coaching business, and I find it hard to get the message out like I want to, but every day is a new day and I try harder the next day. So I guess the second question I want to ask is, what do you geek out about? I feel like everyone has something they geek out about and they just find that's fun for them. And what is your geek out thing?
It would be the many paths of transformation and the many ways to evolve and to grow. So yeah, from a pretty young age, I was very curious about life in general and about these things that people talked about, like God and death, and and then I got really serious, like really deeply curious, in my early 20s, when I was very deep in my own darkness and suffering, and looking for ways to sort that shit out, basically, to stop suffering and to be a happier, more higher functioning human than I was at that time. And so I geeked out about all sorts of spiritual paths. Zen Buddhism was the one that I really sort of felt the strongest alignment with and pulled towards. And I geek out about new findings in neuroscience or in neurocardiology or in quantum physics or quantum biology or epigenetics that might offer hints as to how we as individual humans, and perhaps we as a collective, will emerge from our less evolved times into a higher functioning species. Because I don't know about you, but my observations of humanity over the last, especially over the last few years, actually, has been, wow, we're really, we could do with a little bit of work.
Yeah, very, very much so. Like it's getting hectic out there. Like I know from my own life, I did a lot of studying on metaphysics and spirituality at a young age as well. And just seeing how the world is today, it makes you wonder where we're going to be at in 5 years instead of 10 years or more than that, because it just seems like we're not connected like we should be. And we don't see where we could head to this. Like at this point, we don't know what to do next. And we're in a culture of fear and people just being so stressed out that they don't feel there's any way to keep going. And it's hard every day for most people. So I understand where you're coming from. So do you feel you have learned your life's purpose now?
That's a great question, and I probably would have answered more confidently yes a few years ago than necessarily now, but and whether I have or not, am I able to succinctly articulate that purpose? I don't know. My Zen teacher would say if you can't language it, it didn't happen. So
Wow.
there's a perspective there that suggests that if I have learned my purpose, then I mean I would say I have, and it's to expand and grow and evolve, and therefore my purpose is expanding and evolving and shifting as I reach different stages of my development, and as the world that I'm finding myself in, it goes through its own transitions and development, and there are different things that I think are of greater importance and greater value at different times. But the greatest joy that I find, which I think is usually quite a good clue as to where our deeper purpose might lie, is in witnessing people wake up or move into deeper levels of well-being or joy. So that suggests that my purpose is around supporting people, facilitating people in their growth, in their expansion. Yeah.
I mean, that's a wonderful answer. That's a lot further than I know I can get myself. I have no idea what my life's purpose is yet, but I'm working hard every day to try and figure that out. Could you tell us a little bit about your journey? What got you to where you are now?
Yeah, I mean, I think if I look at the thread or the threads through my life experience, suffering. So like all humans, I have suffered, and most of that was self-created, and the intensity of that pain was one of the driving forces along with a yearning for truth or a yearning for curiosity, that drove all of the other activities and beings and doings that I would say were the sort of the actual activity, if you like, of transformation or growth. So in my experience, meditation has been a very, very fruitful, valuable practice that has delivered a lot of insight. And that was, I've done a lot of meditation. I actually learned from a book when I was living in New Zealand many years ago, and then started practicing with the community as well. And around the same time, I started to practice martial arts and yoga and qigong. And then in my mid-20s, I met a remarkable gentleman called Jumpo Dennis Kelly Roshi, the 83rd, or is it the 84th? I forget, patriarch of Rinzai Zen. So Jumpo is, or was, he sadly passed a couple of years ago, a Zen teacher, a Zen master. And he walked into the room, and I forget what he said. What he said wasn't so important as so much as how he was being and how he was carrying himself. And my consciousness shifted in just a few moments of being in his presence. And I was very excited, and I thought, that's what I want. At the time, I was working in charity fundraising, so looking to empower organizations to educate or feed or cure blindness in their beneficiaries. Okay. And that was very meaningful. But also I kind of sensed that it wasn't operating at a fundamental level. It wasn't changing the very core dynamics of reality. And here was my experience of consciousness, my experience of being transformed just by hanging out with this guy for a few moments. And I very eagerly said, that's what I want. I want to be able to do that, to improve someone's life experience, the quality of their experience, just by being with them. And so I went off to the next retreat that I could with Jumpo, which was in Loveland, Colorado, and attended many more retreats with him. And really, my meditation changed. I now practice Zazen, the form of meditation that Zen Buddhism would point us to. And one thing changed as well, that's not necessarily always part of Zazen, but it was very much part of Jumpo's teaching, was I started to meditate with my eyes open.
Oh, wow.
So which I was definitely not what I had experienced until then.
I was going to say that more.
Potentially more challenging, but also a deeper training, I think, as well. And he put it to me very simply. He said, Will, most of life happens with our eyes open. So it's helpful to cultivate an abiding meditative awareness with eye stimuli around as well. And yeah, that definitely was the beginning of the deepening of my meditation practice. And I really, I've had other, excuse me, I've had other kind of teachers at different times, but and yeah.
That's I can't even imagine meditating with my eyes open. Like there's so much stimuli. I don't think I would be able to function. I guess over time I would be, but I can understand how challenging that would be because of everything that's in our lives at all times. Like so much that gets in the way of just being in the present moment and not being able to be calm. And I've noticed with myself with meditation, the hardest thing is to get out of my own head. And it's even harder when my eyes are open.
Well, the interesting thing is that as I was taught this form, we allow our gaze to rest softly upon the floor about 5 feet in front of us, you know. So we are given something, because obviously we find a spot in the carpet and just hold our vision there. So it's not quite like a candle or a mantra. It's not that gross, not that easy to, but there is something to focus on, you know. Okay. And the more we focus on that, the less we're occupied with thoughts and indeed, you know, smells, or the guy next to us farting, or you know, whatever's happening whilst we're meditating, you know.
Yes.
So in a sense, I think it can actually help us withdraw attention from the mental body, from thoughts, and actually bring us into the body and into the present moment, or into present moment awareness. Sorry, Norton. They claim to be protecting my computer from viruses and so on, but the amount of time they spend popping up trying to get me to buy something else from them, or
they seem more like the virus than anything else.
Yeah, right. It's kind of ironic, isn't it?
I've noticed that with a lot of businesses, their automated systems just destroy your computers, and it's like, why would you do this if you know? Because I guess because you have to pay for it. I mean, everything's about money, yeah. So I mean, everybody has a reason. They all have a reason for why their stuff is just so in our face.
Yeah, I think one of them, you're absolutely right. It does seem to be just to remind me that they're doing some work on my computer, and I should, you know, I'm getting value, you know. And the other stuff is just more explicit, like, you know, upgrade to this package, or your computer might die, sort of thing, you know.
Yes. Even that state of fear.
Yeah, well, of course, that's the general thrust of most marketing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Here's something that you should be scared of, and here's the solution.
I feel like there's a better way. Like, I mean, there's a far better way to do that, and people would still buy their products. And it's not to incite a panic. It's to know I'm getting a quality product. Yeah. And that quality product will make me want to buy it, instead of all the fear they put in and have a product that's not so great or doesn't work like it's supposed to.
Totally. And I think it's also, yeah, there's a reason that so much marketing, including of religion and government policy, you know, it is fear and guilt based, right?
Yeah.
It's because it works. And I think, you know, we've collectively been at a level of consciousness where we're very easily manipulated as individual humans and collectively by the stimulation of fear and guilt. So our brain function changes in that moment, and we have diminished access to our frontal lobe and more amygdala activity and so on, and basically just we just become less intelligent in those moments, and then when, whatever ridiculous politician or ridiculous product or absurd cult or religion is foisted upon us, we're far more inclined to say, well, okay, yeah, I want that because I'm not thinking clearly, because I'm not in my intelligence. And I know in charity fundraising, you can produce an advert that emphasizes the empowerment of these communities that we're assisting, and gives the picture of the happy family that's now got a reliable food source and water source and so on, and then ask people to give money to that charity. And that direct marketing, that television ad or social media ad will work less effectively than the one that shows a starving child looking pitiful and in great suffering. So it's a really sad thing to encounter in fundraising, because I think most people in charity fundraising are quite idealistic, and would much rather be selling or drawing focus to the profound, beautiful, beneficial outcome that the work delivers. But it's just not it doesn't move people in the same way as, oh my God, that person's nearly dead and I've got so much and they've got nothing. So that sort of fear and guilt actually seems to be a more powerful motivator. But I think that we're moving into a time where that is changing, and it will change both with advertisers and teachers and religions and so on being more love and trust driven and coming from love and trust more. And it will happen, of course, with people like you and I and everyone working through those less developed points of humanity and being more in our heart, more in heart-centered awareness and less in our lizard brain or our just really doing the work to become the Christs and the Buddhas that we already are, so it's an exciting time to be alive from that perspective. I think we are at a turning point in the human journey.
I agree. It seems more people don't want to be lied to and don't want to live in a state of constant fear, because once again, in my own life, like I mean, we all have suffering, and it's like a lot of it could be alleviated if we were taught properly how to understand ourselves and try to have empathy for everybody, because everyone's going through something. And if we can collectively think like that, it would literally change the world. Like we could
absolutely.
It would be so easy.
I totally agree, and I feel that our education systems are not fit for purpose, and they're actually conditioning people to dumb down and surrender their natural intelligence and to become obedient cogs in an economic machine, or obedient citizens that don't question authority or the lies that that media and government are pumping out incessantly.
Sheep.
Exactly. But if we actually educated people, if we actually taught them meditation and critical thinking and yoga and emotional intelligence and so on, so people were more embodied, so we were able to we're able to rest and abide in our bodies more comfortably. You know, a lot of strength training or meditative practices like yoga and qigong, you know, they're just helping us locate our awareness in our bodies rather than in our thoughts or in our judging mind, but in more deeply in our awareness, including our somatic awareness, our body awareness. And I think from there, very naturally, that empathy that you call forth arises more readily when we're intimate with our own subtle states of emotion and energy. It helps us. I think it gives our mirror neurons a good workout, such that when we look at another, we can more readily access the pain of their experience or the challenges of their experience. And I think when we see that and feel that clearly, the human is wired to actually feel compassion, to feel love, and to then be motivated to act in a way that serves the well-being of that other human being, rather than judge them or condemn them or other them in some way. Yeah.
And I think a lot of our media is geared toward the differences in people. Like, I mean, even between countries, it's like we always have that competitive nature towards somebody because they're different. And it doesn't seem to be doing us well. Like, we don't, like, if we came together more, I feel like science would we'd have more breakthroughs in science and medicine and mental health. But we have to be together on that. Like, we have to understand the collective consciousness and that we are just a single being of sorts. Like, you know, we're human. We're all human. So, no, I shouldn't have to have more than someone else when we're all equal. And we should all be able to get the same knowledge. We should all be able to get the same, you know, comforts that we need to live. And for some people, they just don't have that. And they spend most of their lives struggling, you know, just to survive, that they can't even think about creativity or like working in a scientific field or anything like that. And I feel like if everyone could work out that need that they have and just be able to work through all the pain. I know, like I said, in my life, I've had a lot of pain. And because I didn't have any emotional intelligence at the time, it made it difficult to perceive life the way it is. Because I was also diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder at a pretty young age. And so it's been hard, even though I studied meditation and Qigong and lots of Eastern teachings at a young age. Like, my stepfather had all these books and martial arts books and all, you know, Buddhist books. And I was just like, I want to read them because they seem at peace. And my life was very chaotic at a young age. And it made it hard to grasp the world because you're always worried about somebody hurting you. How do you deal with pain? How do you deal with suffering? How do you not let it run your life?
Well, for me, a big turning point came when I recognized, you know, saw really clearly how dysfunctional it was to try to not feel my pain. You know, whether I was drinking alcohol or exercising excessively or thinking a lot or smoking weed. You know, I had a long list of unskillful ways of diminishing the pain or distracting myself from it. And from that, there came a moment where I realized that I really had to turn and face my pain and feel it. And so then my work became about not feeling better so much as being better at feeling, which I think is developing that emotional intelligence we're speaking of, and allowing my awareness to meet and touch those really painful, pointy, jagged parts of my emotional body and sort of digest them in that way. So
I know in the past few years, I have gone through such an awakening of things I didn't even know were a problem and situations that I had forgotten about, or just the overall stress in life had gotten to me. And it made it hard to live with other people. It stopped me from being around people in general. I became a recluse, and I took that time that I had to learn things, learn everything I ever wanted to learn. Like anything I could think of, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna take a day and just learn as much as I can about it. And it helped me guide my life more. It helped me focus more than I've ever focused before in my life. And I'm so grateful for having that time. It just made everything see more clearly. But the longer I feel that way, the more I realize that there's so much more to learn. And I'm excited for once in my life that I have the time to be able to look into those things. I guess what I'm trying to get at is, what's some advice you would give to do that for people? Like, I know the way I went about it might not be the same way you went about it. What is the basics for achieving that clarity, I guess was what I'm saying. How did you reach that clarity? Let's see. Also, your website. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say that's a big question, and I'm trying to find words that encapsulate some truth. But I think that looking back at my life, there's always grace present, And so it's less about my making something happen and more about my opening to and softening into and relaxing into the grace of being in this moment right now. And in the midst of this suffering or difficulty or fear or so it's sort of we come to alchemize the confusion or the darkness or the difficulty of our habituated thought patterns or feelings or and discover that amidst all of that difficulty there is a kindness and a grace and a love that is our source, and that is in a very real way guiding us every step and every breath of this human journey.
The journey is ongoing.
Mm-hmm.
That's been a big part of my life, is being able to be okay knowing that I have to do the same things over and over again in order to achieve the success I want and the progress that I want. And nothing is fast. Like, you have to take time to understand things. You have to take time and have patience that you can get to a point of feeling less stress. And I'm just so amazed that I've gotten to where I am. And even though things have been hard, I know now what I can do to make things better. And with that thought, I can just be day to day and not worry so much. A big problem of mine was always just being very impatient and getting very angry. And I realized it never helped the situation. I always ended up mad and nobody else was. And that made me more mad. And it was an ongoing cycle of anger and pain. And I wish I'd had somebody like you there to help me on my journey earlier and just work through things that you don't even think about that could cause you stress. Like, there's so much stress, and it's been difficult until recently. Now I'm starting to see the fruit of my labors, and I've never been so grateful in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I want, like, my audience to see that there are ways out of the pain that we all feel, and that they can, and it doesn't take a lot of it's hard work, but it doesn't take a lot to start that process.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it can be anything small can help. facilitate progress in a positive way. Okay, so I got off topic. So let me ask my next question. Tell me about your books, The Gratitude Prescription and Blessed with a Brain Tumor.
Yeah, well, firstly, congratulations on your journey to get to where you've got. You know, it's not for the faint of heart, this human journey. And so I bow to your wisdom and the journeying that you have endured and undertaken.
Thank you.
To be where you are. Yes, I've got a couple of books. The first one, Blessed with a Brain Tumor, is kind of just sharing how that diagnosis experience for me was so transformative.
I bet. I can imagine.
And then the Gratitude Prescription looks to zero in on one quality of consciousness or our approach to life, and the power of that, you know, really nurturing and deepening in a grateful stance with life, and the power that brings into our well-being and the well-being of those around us as well. You know, the research is really interesting, that it's not just about improving our mental and physical health, but we become better citizens and family members and so on for those around us when we're immersed in gratitude. So
it's like we were talking about, like, you know, once, I mean, it's just like being sick. It's just like a virus. If, you know, you have gratitude, it'll spread like wildfire. Like the people around you become more happy, like your work becomes more happy, like, and that gives you more things to be grateful about. And I don't think people realize how much that helps. Because I know in my own life, I wasn't grateful for much when it came to my life for a long time. And once I started reminding myself about what I was grateful for on a daily basis, did I see that things didn't bother me so much. I was a lot more positive about the things I did and more excited about things I did. It snowballed, and it just made my life happier. And I know a lot of my listeners out there are going through things and they don't think it can be that simple. And a lot of people don't see it that way. And it's like, but if you try it and stop the limiting beliefs, you'll be amazed at, you know, what it will entail for you, that you'll just feel better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's a simplicity in gratitude, which is, you know, I've worked with people who have commented on that, but it's, you know, maybe they thought gratitude was a sort of, you know, lightweight, simple practice, but then they realize that when consistently applied, it can really be the cause of profound changes in all domains of our life, to keep that awareness open of the goodness and the beauty that is ever present in our being and our existence.
Is really life altering.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so simple. And I think that's a lot of the reason why a lot of people don't try it. I think it's because it's too simple. Like they're like, that can't be the thing. Like they already go against the thought process of it can be that simple.
Yeah, right.
Like they just don't want to. I don't know why people don't want to think it's that easy. You would feel like that would be the thing that would drive them to do it more, would be that it's that simple. But I think we have gotten to a point where, as a species, that it has to be difficult in order for it to work.
Mm-hmm. Or very complicated or something. Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes it can be that simple. Okay, what is some good advice you have for anyone wanting to start a podcast, business, and or writing a book?
Get really clear on what excites you, what you're most passionate about, and follow that. Yeah, so what gets you out of bed in the morning? What gets you reading or studying? What fills you with excitement?
I wish I'd had that same advice when I started, because I had no clue what I was doing. But slowly but surely, I have gained more knowledge about things, and I've noticed where I help the most and what makes me happy. And it's been amazing. I love talking to other people with the same mindset as me, or at least, somewhat similar. And usually we don't get that from the circle we're around on a daily basis. At least I don't.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I hear you.
And so it's always good to find other people with the positive mindset and realize that life doesn't have to be as hard as we make it.
Mm-hmm.
And once people get that thought process in their head, it can literally change everything.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's see. Could you tell us a little bit about your nonprofit?
Yeah, Love and Truth Party was designed as a self-organizing, self-replicating movement of spiritual awakening, and people can play by handing out love letters from the universe and set up their own local groups where people come together to meditate and drop into source consciousness. And yeah, it's been a lot of fun. We've handed out thousands of love letters from the universe and wake up calls that are designed to make people think and step outside of their ordinary consciousness and thought patterns, and basically create a more loving world where people are more immediately connected to their source, or to our source, whether we call that God or consciousness or a loving presence. Yeah.
That's amazing. I might get in touch with you about doing some stuff with that, because that would be amazing to have where I live. Excuse me.
Please do. Yeah.
I feel like that would help a lot of people struggling with mental illness, with addiction, and that's where I help the most with people. Is I try to help people with addiction, and I try to help people with mental illness, because as a person that's been through both, I know how hard it is sometimes to get a loving message from anybody. And it just makes things better when you have a kind word. And people, that's another thing people don't realize is that a kind word can change a person's whole day. And just
Absolutely.
knowing that people are there for them and they have the support they need when they feel like they can't get through it, when they can't get through life. And I feel like that's an amazing nonprofit to have because it can do so much good in the world. So I will definitely get in touch with you about becoming a part of that. And
please do.
That would be great.
I think you're already a part of it, is what I'm feeling. I think we have similar intentions and missions in this world. So, yeah, very happy to talk further with you for sure.
That would be great. Thank you so much. How can my listeners contribute to the Love and Truth Party?
There is a website, loveandtruthparty.org, and they can play around with the resources on there and make a contribution if they feel to as well. We've got a podcast as well, the Truthlover, that people are welcome to check out. And we're on social media and so on, of course, as everyone is these days.
Gotta be nowadays. So that is great. I want to give you one last question.
Sure.
Well, two. It's actually two. It's two. The first is, what is some advice you would like to give to the audience that isn't normal, but they can apply it to everyday life?
I would recommend starting and ending every day by locating either in your own mind or, even better, with a loved one, something that you've really appreciated. So my partner and I, when we go to sleep each night, we ask each other, what have you enjoyed today? What have you appreciated? So that can be a very simple practice of drawing our attention to the goodness and the beauty that's already in our lives.
I agree. And question, it is, what is a question you could ask the next guest without knowing who they are? Anything that you would want to ask someone?
What excites you most about the human condition right now? Where do you see the greatest potential for growth or collective well-being?
That's a good question. I wish I would have asked that question now. But that will be for the next person I have on the show. So Great. They will get that question, and then we'll keep passing on like that. I got this idea from another podcast that I watch, and the guy, he has so many great guests. And thank you for being a great guest. Thank you for being my experiment in podcasting fully with interviews. So thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you for, it's an honor to be your first guest. So thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure chatting with you.
All right. Thank you so much. And thank you for being on the show.
My pleasure. Yeah.
All right.
Rest well, and I hope we get to speak again.
Likewise. Thank you.
Bye for now.
Bye for now.
So that was the first interview. Number one, locked in, and I feel great. I want to thank my guest, Mr. Will Pye. He has a wonderful message he is, putting out forth into the world, and it's amazing. You should get in contact with him. I'll leave all his info in the info box so that everyone can get that. And yeah, I'm very excited to be able to do this. I want to thank you guys for listening. Like, share, comment, subscribe. If you have questions that you would like me to ask in an interview, please send them to me at mail@thenomothetes.com. And I'll look forward to getting those questions and getting them, asking them to the right people that you can get answers that can help in your everyday life or your life overall. That's what it's about. Getting the information out there so people can do the things they need to do and know that there's ways to accomplish those things. And I feel like everyone should get a chance. I know I have my chance right now, and that's why I'm taking it. I know videos have been slow lately, but I just started college, so I'm trying to get my psychology degree. So it's been busy, but it's been good. And I'm excited to see where it goes from here. Thank you for today. Thank you for yesterday. And thank you for tomorrow. Always remember to question your reality. And at every end, there is a beginning. You guys have a wonderful day, rest of the day, night, morning, wherever you're at in the time stream. I wish you well. You guys take care and can't wait for interview 2. It's going to be a good one. Y'all should check in and I'll let you know when that's going to be posted. All right. Take care.